The 10-Point Report is brought to you by Zero Calorie Sweetener, also by the most annoying fan bases, and by Elon Musk. Thank you, Elon Musk, for the humor. Let's get started, shall we, with Plato's studio.
The moment where, let's say, this way of making music came into focus for us was during COVID. This is when we were locked in our apartment, and it's one thing to be together all the time in the same space, but the other thing is to consciously make it more difficult by sharing the same instrument, by playing music together.
Classical music is seen in a very different way in Russia. It's much more part of the mainstream in a way it's not here. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a legacy of Soviet times, of course, when classical music was one art form where people could probably be free, because it is so abstract at times and it is so implaceable. It's very difficult to say what exactly this is about.
What is it like for musicians in Russia now? Do you have contact with them?
Most of our friends who we studied together, they moved away from Moscow. The time we moved to London was 2011. Things were relatively free back then. You could see also the subjects people start discussing. Of course, nowadays it's almost impossible to talk about what is happening in the country with people who live there.
Even though you are integrated and you're British citizens, but when you go places, do you still feel that you are treated differently because you are from Russia?
But it's a very interesting thing how people like to put everything in boxes, like in my case, when the war started, people would often write Kazakh pianist, Russian, Korean pianist, British pianist. I've never told anyone how to write myself, and I would find surprising things. Just because, I was born in Kazakhstan, grew up in Russian, Jewish, Korean family, lived in Russia, moved to Britain. I don't know where it's coming from, but people somehow feel that they need to put you in that box or that box.
Yeah, the way that Russia is now outlawed what it calls an international LGBT movement, whatever that is. And that must hurt.
Yeah, of course.
Well, but it isn't shocking, isn't it? In context of Russian history, it's not particularly surprising.
Well, surprising is one thing, but as gay Russians, it must be.
Well, it is very hurtful to see what's happening in the country. With, I think, every possible human right. Being a normal citizen, you're always on the edge to be a criminal there. So when we lived there, we came to study in Moscow in 2007. That was probably, in my memory, the freest period in a way. As a young kid, you would feel somehow freer there than nowadays. So people would still continue create and perform, and their life would go on.
Oh, but they didn't go on. Anyway, let's move on to Conversations with a Communist. And this is going to be also known as Trotsky trolling. Mr. Producer, do you have the audio? Let's roll the audio. Thank you, Mr.
It's like you have foreign governments that are adversarial to the United States that are doing more to protect U.S. citizens than the U.S. government is. We're a non-woke, traditionalist, party that's focused on actually unleashing the forces of production in this country, showing Americans what communism is all about. That's why we recently launched the American Communist Party in the United States.
Because you look around the world, you can say communism succeeds. China hasn't had communism. It's had a weird state-run monopoly capitalist system that had to deal with the globalists to build them up.
There's no reason for the U.S. to be pushing these anti-human degrowth policies, but it's because the Trotskyites that they are.
I just hear that. What made you believe communism is the way?
Seeing how imperialism works firsthand. That was Trotsky, and Trotsky was aligned with the British and American financial interests that propped up the Nazis and propped up Hitler. And now we're today seeing that this Trotskyite faction of neocons is the same group of people that is pushing their anti-human, pro-financialist agenda in the United States and Europe, and also trying to bring countries like Venezuela and Syria and Iran and Russia under their grips.